All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
How you going, man?
So that's going well. Today we are talking all things concurrent training, really concurrent training effect. It's also known as the interference effect. That is what most people know it as. It's almost been updated in the scientific literature to be called CTE, or the concurrent training effect. And it's where when you combine strength and endurance training, um, they over time kind of start to hurt each other. So you can't get as strong if there's too much endurance, and you can't get as much endurance if there's too much strength training. And this is a big question. It's a concern for a lot of athletes who are trying to do strength and conditioning, have this endurance element and a strength element, or hypertrophy if you're looking for muscle growth. So I figured we'd dive into that today and talk about the concurrent training effect and what we know, not only from our own experience in programming this for as long as we have, but also just what the science actually says. And most of the things that I'm going to be going over are what the science actually says and things we've seen in practice. But it's really the top three things that you need to be thinking about. So you ready to dive in, Joe?
Yeah, man.
Let's get into it. So the first thing I want people to know is it's a question. Are you a badass? And the reason I'm asking this question is because how much people sometimes can get wrapped around the axle about concurrent training effect and how much this stuff matters. But the scientific literature pretty much says if you are a newer, novice, intermediate athlete, the concurrent training effect doesn't really matter that much because your body's just going to be in this response phase, adaptation phase to everything you're doing. It's not really until you're a more experienced athlete that you really have to start worrying about the interference effect or the concurrent training effect. So anybody here watching or listening who's like super worried about it, if you're not an advanced athlete, you don't need to worry about it as much. How advanced? To be honest, I'm not talking about a professional athlete, but if you have like a training age, you've been training very consistently for at least 6, 5, 7, 10 years. We're talking about consistently doing both of these, strength and endurance type stuff, you are going to want to start taking some of the programming principles that we're going to mention today in mind. So if you're like kind of new to this stuff, or like less than 5 years, or I still wouldn't be worried about it too much. Just do what you can.
And this is kind of that honeymoon phase that people get with CrossFit as well. If you went from being a runner to then doing CrossFit, that you're lifting weights at high intensity and doing things with weights that you've never done before. And while that would typically have the interference effect we're talking about, but you've never done that before, so you're still going to get stronger, and then you're going to have that plateau shortly after.
Right. And the honeymoon phase is fun. It makes you think that no matter what you're doing, you're amazing. All right, so let's get into the top three. I kind of removed that as being the first one because I just want to start that as a prerequisite. And then the second thing, before we move on to the top three items here, is you also have to ask yourself how much it actually matters in the sense of what you're giving up. So when we look at studies in concurrent training, there is, let's say, okay, they did too much endurance work, and it hurt their strength. And now that's a scientifically proven fact. But when you dive into these studies, what you don't find is I did too much endurance work. These people either had no strength gains or moved backwards. That's not really what happens. What normally happens is they do a strength only group, and they say the strength only group did 10 weeks of resistance training and they saw this much of an increase. And then they have the concurrent training group, and they said these people did resistance training and endurance work, and they did not get as strong as the strength only group. And my general response to that is no crap. Like, no crap. If you're completely focused on one thing, then that's going to go up higher than the other. And so what if you actually just look at the data, remove that strength group, now we're just looking at the concurrent training group in these studies, you'll see that they improve their endurance and they also improve their strength. But they may have only improved their strength, half as much, and it's normally more than that, but let's say half as much as the strength or resistance training only group. And that's something for you to know as well. If you're not trying to be the strongest powerlifter in the world and also the fastest marathon runner in the world, then you're probably okay. you also don't need to worry about it too much. So I think that's enough caveats and prerequisites here. Let's get into the actual programming and how we do it. So the first thing is 3, 6, 24. And so that's the first rule you need to know when you are programming this stuff is 3, 6, and 24. So that's 3 hours, 6 hours, or 24 hours. You do want to separate these if you can. If you're looking for just like I said, the optimal strength gains, either separate them by a minimum of 3, 6, or 24. Anything greater than 24, you're going to eliminate a lot of the interference effect or concurrent training effect. So try to separate those out as much as you can to reduce the concurrent training effect. Anything to add on something like this, Joe?
So for the most part, our athletes are going to be on the 24 if you're just following our training, because we have whatever you're doing that day, you have your hour training session, and then you're not going to train for the next day. But the 3 and the 6 will come in for, and this has been a common topic on our community group recently, and really it comes out all the time, especially when the weather gets better. Is when the weather is better, people are wanting to do trail races, marathon races, things out to like endurance events on top of the training. They don't want to lose the training that they're doing now with us, or the hard to kill strength, whatever, but they need to add running. So that 3 to 6 hour break between, okay, I'm going to do my run stuff now for it, and then I'm going to do my other training, my other lifting later on, so that will help negate some of the training effect versus just going from, okay, I'm done lifting, now I'm going to go right into my run.
Yeah. And if you really wanted to, like because sometimes we do program strength and conditioning in the same day. Like if you're really worried about this and you were the more advanced athlete, it doesn't mean you have to have two separate 1 hour training sessions to be a like concurrent training athlete. Like let's just say our training sessions are an hour. If you did 30 minutes of if you did 30 minutes of strength in the morning and then in the afternoon you did 30 minutes of endurance, it's the same training session, but you broke it up. You will eliminate some of that concurrent training effect. But again, it's not going to end up being that big of a deal. So let's move on to number 2, prioritize. I think I got that most of it right anyway. So for prioritize, if you have to know what's most important for you. Are you a strength athlete? Are you looking for muscle gain? Or are you an endurance athlete? Or are you looking for, and what type of endurance athlete? Is it a long cycling race? Is it a 5K? Is it a marathon? So you need to start thinking of those things and which one's more important to you. A lot of people are going to know this right off the bat. Like for me, strength is more important. It's just a little bit more my background. So that's what I prioritize when I am doing my training. And it's this simple. So I'm going to write barbell equals barbell and endurance equals endurance for priority. So if you want to prioritize, this is what needs to happen first in your training sequence if you are going to train in the same day. Okay. So this is if you're not doing the 3, 6, 24 hours of separation, we're now down to an individual training session. How do we prioritize what happens and when in a training session? When you are doing this in a training session, if strength is more important, then you're going to want to do the barbell stuff first. If endurance is more important, you're going to want to do the endurance stuff first. It's that simple. Whatever is more important to you, whatever you're prioritizing, you need to do first. So barbell equals barbell, endurance equals endurance. Try and stick to that. We typically do. We don't bounce around in our programming. We're not going to have, some sort of endurance event and then a strength and endurance. Like we won't hop around back and forth like that in a training session. Actually be really odd for anyone, I think, to program that way. But just know that whatever you want to prioritize, this is how you should execute. If it's endurance stuff, that goes first. If it's barbell stuff, that goes first. Anything to hit on there, Joe?
Just that, not to be confused with energy systems training, because energy systems can involve, both of these things, but that's just a specific energy system. So that's a little bit of a, not really a caveat, but it's just something to think about. So if you see a barbell, but you're doing interval weight training, it's still hitting a certain energy system with a barbell.
Yeah. And so it's really, and to be honest, you could kind of do this on your own, like whatever's most important to you. you could be on the strength track and then do whatever Joe's written for endurance first to prioritize that before you hit in the strength work. So you can kind of prioritize your own schedule without even the programming needed to do it for you. Now, the third and final thing I want to talk about is frequency. So all of this stuff, like I said, this is being pulled from scientific studies. And the one thing they found out for strength, again, this is if strength is your priority, they recommend a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1. And this is strength training to endurance training ratio in your training calendar. So that means if you were to just look at a strength 2-to-1, it would be Monday, Tuesday, strength days, Wednesday, endurance day, Thursday, Friday, strength days, Saturday, endurance day, or you could take that up one further notch. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, strength days, Thursday, endurance day, so on and so forth. So for strength, 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. And now, if you are in the endurance world, you might think, oh, which just 2-to-1, 3-to-1, but it's not. It's actually 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 that they found the best. So this is one endurance, or no, it's still going with strength first. So strength, one strength, one endurance session. So just be like Monday strength, Tuesday endurance, or it would be Monday strength, and then Tuesday, Wednesday endurance, Thursday strength, something like that. So either a 1-to-1 or a 1-to-2 if endurance is your focus. And that's what they found through a bunch of studies on how your training week should look. So you can also start looking at this. If it's like for every strength days, how many endurance sessions should I have? Anything on the week frequency there, Joe?
Well, this is basically like a quick snapshot of how the strength and endure tracks are structured as well. I know for strength, I'm very somewhat formulaic of how I program, but also it has to do with the interference effect, and so that I know that the strength athletes are getting their strength every day. There's at least 2 per week. Usually, every other week there might be a third with a lot of accessory work and maybe weighted carries and stuff, and then we'll have more of an endurance day another day, and then endure we'll also have Marco will have 1 to 2 interval type conditioning days, an accessory day, and then he'll have his strength day, and then that cycle will kind of repeat throughout, and and then there might even be a week with 2 strength days to 2 endurance days. So that's basically how the snapshot is for those 2 individual tracks that have those prioritized goals.
Yeah. So, and then putting this in relation to another video we did on the concurrent training template. So then you can use that template, but then it would just be how you want to separate, whether we're talking about in a single day, in a session, or how you want to separate things in a week. But this is kind of when we did that video on the concurrent training template, it really like we're just starting to peel that onion, if you will. And we started to get some questions. And the main reason I want to talk about the interference effect here is because that was one of the questions that we got. And I was like, yeah, there's so much to unpack. And so we're going to start unpacking some of the stuff in these videos. But now this is the second thing, the second cross check if you're programming is, okay, I'm following those guidelines in the template that we provided for concurrent training. But now what do I do if I need to separate out or I'm trying to minimize the interference effect or the concurrent training effect? Well, here's what you're going to start looking at. You're going to start looking at in the session, how do you prioritize the work that's being done if we're separating out in a session for a day, and then frequency in the week, how those things would look. Because if we went back to that template that I did, one of those days was just an endurance day, and it had strength days butting up to it. My favorite, absolute favorite, and I'm just going to say, this is more for me in actually executing the training, is just 1-to-1. I don't always program this way because normally when I'm programming, I'm trying to keep a specific goal in mind for that cycle. But if I'm just talking about in my own execution, my favorite is more of an endurance split. Even though I like strength more, I like 1-to-1 because I like one day where I can just kind of be like, this is strength. I don't need to worry about anything else today. The next day, this is endurance or conditioning. I don't need to worry about anything else today. I like compartmentalizing my training days like that, to be honest, as opposed to, having, a 30-minute strength session, then a 15-minute conditioning window. I don't like those as much because I like to really go all in on the effort that I'm doing. Which one do you like, Joe?
Yeah. Definitely the same. That's why I think it's sort of reflected in the strength track, which I kind of have because it's strength focused. I kind of have those liberties, but I definitely like. I guess you can even call it boring to a certain extent. But as of now, I think I like the more of, like I said, the formulaic what strength focused day, endurance focused day. Because if I go out for a run day, like that's all I want to do that day. I just want to run. I just want to make that day a longer run day versus like I'm going to do some weights and then do like a 20-minute run. I'd rather just be like, well, I'm going to extend this run to 30 minutes and then a cool down longer afterwards.
Yeah. It's easier mentally. So yeah, that's basically it. If you do follow our strength track at Garage Gym Athlete, you're going to see more of the frequency that we have laid out here. If you follow the endurance track, you'll see more of the frequency that we have laid out here. And then hard to kill, it actually jumps around depending on what the goal of the cycle is, which, changes, and we brief in our webinars and everything else. But if you are looking to get some programming done, this is kind of the holy grail of the concurrent training effect or interference effect rules that you need to know. Those are like the top 3 rules. There are a lot of other things that you could get into, training volume, high intensity, all that stuff. And like I said, we're peeling this onion one layer at a time, and not trying to dive into every aspect in each video, but we'll keep peeling these layers back and teaching you guys, things that you need to be thinking about if you're looking to program, or if you're like, hey, you know what? I don't want to do any of this crap. How about you guys just do it for me? We absolutely will do it for you. You can go to garagegymathlete.com and sign up for a 14-day free trial. And I will say, just caveat to all this, I think is if you are recovering to the best of your ability, that means sleeping well, eating enough food, drinking enough water, all the recovery metrics. I think, and that hasn't been studied, I think the concurrent training effect is greatly, if not all the way, eliminated. I think if you're recovering really, really well, you can still see phenomenal strength gains, muscle mass increase with endurance gains. And people prove this all the time. But I think that you have to have all these other things dialed in to be able to truly see those results. And that hasn't really been studied yet. But I just know from my own personal experience, I don't normally hit plateaus when I'm trying to do both at the same time. And the only time I've ever really had to hit a plateau was when I was doing the back squat mile thing, and I got up to like 465, 470, and I was down to like 512 mile. Yeah, I was starting to like plateau a little bit there, but those are some pretty damn extremes, right? Like those are like, we're getting pretty far off the spectrum there. And so again, if you're not getting to those levels, it doesn't matter that much. And how are we training? When I was doing training for that goal, strength day, endurance day, strength day, endurance day, strength, endurance. Like it was very much this frequency. But that's it for this one. If you guys have any questions about concurrent training, more programming stuff, let us know in the comments here on YouTube. If you're a podcast listener, thank you so much. Leave us a 5-star review and positive comment. But that's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching or listening.